Inspiration.com.
Ugh. Hmm. Okay. When I was 11 years old, I walked down to my local theater. I plunked down $5. They gave me change. And I said, I would like a ticket for Terminator 2. And they gave it to me. That was 1991. That was the kind of thing you could do in 1991. An 11-year-old could go buy a ticket for an R-rated movie. And I sat there and I fell in love with that movie. It is an example of one of those movies that is better than its predecessor, a sequel that's better than the original. And a rare example, I would say, of a franchise that, you know, when Terminator 3 came out, they're like, okay, now we're going to have a Terminator trilogy. Normally, trilogies, in my opinion, are a good thing. There's a beginning, middle, and end chapter. But Terminator 2 kind of ended it successfully and didn't need a sequel. And so Terminator 3 came out. It made a lot of money, but in hindsight, nobody really liked it. A few years passed, and they said, okay, we're going to give people what they want. We're going to give them the Terminator movie set in the future so they can see the war with the machines. And that's what we all wanted. And then they hired Mick G as the director, and they decided that the movie would be PG-13 and not focus on John Connor, but focus on some character that we've never seen before. Their original idea was even for this character to replace John Connor as the savior of humanity. That got leaked, and they said, oh shit, nobody likes this, we better change the ending. After that, we got Terminator the Sarah Connor Chronicles, a show that I enjoyed very much. The second season got too convoluted. The network kind of moved it around a lot, and it just sort of disappeared. People, you know, it was popular, and then the network kind of fucked it up, and that vanished. Years passed, and then we got Terminator Genesis, which I did a review on. And this was a soft reboot. It was intended to sort of restart the franchise while keeping the continuity of only Terminator 1 and 2, ignoring 3 and Salvation. That didn't work. It was PG-13. Nobody liked it. The story made no sense. It was hard to follow. It was a bad movie. Then they waited a brief 3 years to give us Terminator Dark Fate. Now, this movie came out in January, and I wanted to review it then, but I decided I was going to wait because I wanted to show everybody the new cover art that was designed specifically for me by my good friend Oliver Judd, who I hired to do some DVD slips for me. This was originally the cover for the Terminator 3 video game. And I liked it so much that I said, hey, can you just sort of modify it and turn it into a Terminator collection? And he did, and it's wonderful, and I thank him very much for it. Why do I have any of the Terminator movies past T2 if they're not very good? I don't know. This is a franchise where It should never have been a franchise past the second movie. And, you know, I bought T3 because it had a couple of good action scenes. I bought Salvation because I liked the idea of the future war and the movie being set in the future. I bought Genesis because I had the others, so I just went, all right. And this case holds 6 discs. And so the 6th Terminator movie came out. It was panned universally, but I thought, I've got one more spot in this case. Let's just get it. It's not as bad as Genesis. Dark Fate is not as bad as Genesis. But it's not good either. It is easily the second worst Terminator movie. The plot doesn't make much sense. And the new characters are not likable. The old characters aren't likable. You're stuck with a pale version of Sarah Connor and the Terminator. That the glory days are gone. Arnold and Linda Hamilton are senior citizens. And granted, Arnold's supposed to be a robot, so that's one thing. But Sarah Connor's getting tossed around and thrown across the room and smashing into a wall and jumping out of an airplane and everything. And you just go, no, you're like 65 years old. There's no way. So the idea of Terminator Dark Fate is it opens with a very controversial scene, and that ruined the franchise immediately within the 30 seconds of the movie for most people. Through the use of very impressive de-aging technology, maybe the best that I've ever seen, they give us Sarah Connor and John Connor post-Terminator 2 around a year or so later after Terminator 2. And they're on a beach in Mexico, and suddenly a Terminator shows up, of course, played by Arnold, shoots John Connor, kills him dead. You know, the guy who was the reason for the entire franchise, the guy that was destined to be the savior of humanity, wiped out in the first 30 seconds. The kid doesn't even get a line. I say kid, I mean, it was Edward Furlong again, but de-aged. And so now we have, they stopped Judgment Day, and yet Terminators kept coming. But Judgment Day, as we have seen in every one of the Terminator movies since Terminator 3, is inevitable. There is no fate, but what we make is gone, out the door. And Judgment Day is now destiny. So we're introduced to a new Kyle Reese type character, who is a woman from the future who has cybernetic enhancements. And she has to go save our new John Connor, who is played by a young woman who is living in Mexico with her family. And, you know, she's going to be the new savior of humanity, even though you never get the feeling like she's going to grow up to be that. And they're running from another bad Terminator who looks just like the old Terminators, you know, the exoskeleton, but it's no longer Skynet, it's now Legion, and yet it's the same basic Judgment Day, and but the Arnold who killed John Connor, he's still alive, and he's been secretly, or anonymously sending information to Sarah Connor through the years to have her kill the Terminators that Skynet sent back, even though Skynet doesn't exist anymore. And because he feels guilty about having killed John, because in the 20 years since then, he's become more human, and now he's married and has a kid, and his profession is he puts up drapes. And oh my god, this movie is so stupid. This movie is so, so stupid. All they had to do was make the future movies. That's all they had to do. Just follow up on Salvation. Or if you're going to reboot it in the future. It's the same goddamn movie that we've seen over and over except for Salvation. Terminator sent back in time. Somebody sent back to protect somebody, usually John Connor, but this time a different person, from another Terminator, and it's the same movie. You know, being hunted by a Terminator. Without any of the heart, without any of the spirit of the original. It's just a bad movie. Again, it's more competent than Terminator Genisys, and at least it retains an R rating. The action is fine in the beginning, but it quickly goes over the top into a CGI kind of a mess. It's just not a good movie. It's just not. And it is so disappointing because all they had to do was stick to the future movies. Maybe make another pair of movies. You know, Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and then one set in the future where John Connor, you know, meets Kyle Reese, and then the second one, and this is maybe sort of the beginning, the middle part of the war, and this is the second part of the war where they find the time machine, and the movie ends with Arnold arriving in 1984, and that's how it ends. Perfect sort of a loop kind of a movie franchise, and they didn't do it. They had to just recycle the same plot over and over and over again. Now, Terminator Dark Fate, the people, there's the expression, you go woke, you go broke. That certainly does seem to have some basis in with plenty of examples of it from, you know, what they did with Birds of Prey and Charlie's Angels movie and the Ghostbusters reboot, and a lot of these movies were, you know, it's okay, we're gonna replace men with women, and we're gonna, you know, we're gonna shit on the older movies. These weren't, you didn't want these movies. You want our movies with our message in it, and I have mixed feelings on that. I don't think there's anything wrong with, if you're going to have a new savior of humanity, with that person being a woman. I don't feel like it was really an example of like the, you know, they're saying, well, John Connor represented the patriarchy and we've got to, you know, replace him because we don't want a white man, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that was the message. I think that they were trying to forge their own path. They were looking for a more original way to do it. And we'd never had a female protector come back in time. I don't know. It's not as egregious as some of the other movies that I've seen where it's just, oh, all men are stupid. I've not, you know, I've seen that in, you know, I've not seen the Ghostbusters reboot, nor have I seen the Charlie's Angels reboot, nor have I seen Birds of Prey. All three of which, from everything I've seen of them and heard about them, that is what their message is women good, men bad. That's not really what this is. This is just, I think, them trying to do something slightly more original. Slightly, again, it's just sort of like swapping the gender and that's it. And that's their idea of what is original. I'm going 1.5 stars for Terminator Dark Fate. It's not a good movie. I think between this and Genisys, it's not that much better. In fact, it might even be, you know, as I'm talking about it, it's sort of, I remember more about Genisys than I do about Dark Fate, and I don't remember shit about Genisys. So pick your poison, people. If you want to see one of the later Terminator movies, you've got two shit choices to make. And I would just recommend don't. Just stick to Terminator 1 and 2. Thankfully, this movie bombed. Hopefully, that means the franchise can just rest. That's what it needs to do. Maybe give it 20 years. Let people miss it. And then maybe make another one. This was too quick after Genesis. It confuses people. It confuses people when you're like, here's our Terminator movie. We're ignoring the last two movies, and so this is actually Terminator 3. Oh, wait, no, this didn't work. And then 2 years later, okay, this is actually Terminator 3. This is the true Terminator 3. People you stop caring. You just go, okay, this is all stupid. This is all dumb, and I don't want to participate in it. 1.5 for Terminator Dark Fate. If it wasn't for the fact that I've got this OCD thing going on with my DVDs where it's like I could not bear to have an empty spot in that Terminator case, I wouldn't have bought it. I wouldn't have watched it. It would have been one of the... I watched it because I bought it. I didn't even watch it the first night I bought it. I bought it and like 2 weeks went by and I was like, all right, I guess I'll watch Terminator Dark Fate. Skip it. It's not good. The worlds. Sort of gave myself the challenge of, okay,